right. Hello,
Hang on.
everyone. My name is Alberto with the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, and we're just waiting for all the systems to connect here. So bear with me one moment while we get all systems live. Here we go. Just waiting to connect. Perfect. And we're live on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. So hello, everyone. I'm Alberto, the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, here with Matthew Wood and Rixt Botello from New Zealand. And tonight is a special offering, the free interview. Matthew Wood is going to interview New Zealand herbalist and author Rixt Botello. And I'm going to show you where you can find Rixt's book. And what a gem of a book, and also the perfect topic to converse with Matthew about since it's on low dosing. So if you bear with me one moment here, I'll bring you to Rixt Botello's website. Also add the link in the comments so that you can find it yourself. There it is. Perfect. So we are on, if we go back here, I'm on the book page already, but rixtherbals.co.nz. And then if you click on the banner here, Low Dosage Methodology, then you'll land here. She has 4 different books available for you, and her latest book is the Low Dosage Methodology, which I'll show you here. Low Dosage Methodology in Herbal Medicine, History, Philosophy, and Application. And I was remarking on how wonderful of a cover the book has. And if you want to chime in, Rixt, with a bit of the story that you were telling me about the cover of the book, I feel like people would love to hear that.
Yeah, hello.
Well, the cover, the artwork is sorry, you're right. Yeah,
No,
the artwork is actually done by my daughter. Kokopata is her name. She's a really good artist, and as you can see, the whole thing is shaped like a drop. The drops are within a drop, being the drop dosage, but also the herbs that are in it. There's a lot of thought went into that because I wanted to represent every nation or continent really in the world. So as you can see on the left there, you've got the wild jam. Above that is the rosemary. So the wild jam is the Americas. The rosemary is European. And then the kawakawa on the other side is New Zealand. The ginger is for the Asian countries like Indonesia and so on. And the ginkgo for China. And then, of course, you've got your beautiful echinacea, couldn't resist her, and wild rose as well. Wild rose I put there because it's a batch flower specific for apathy and giving people motivation and enthusiasm. And that's what I sort of put in there to give people the motivation and enthusiasm of reading my book because it's so big.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. And I just have a little bit of housekeeping to do before we get into the interview. And it is something that you may want to be aware of. And we're back on the homepage of the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism. The homepage is always updated, so you can always check here for updates. But if you want more personalized updates, you can enter your name and email and subscribe to the newsletter. But if you scroll down, you'll see free herbalism classes, and I encourage you to explore that on your own. I may tour that a little bit later, but there are plenty of free classes, full-length free classes that you can check out there, as well as a free download of the flashcards that are available at the moment. But I wanted to bring your attention to the Shamanism and Herbalism Retreat coming up July 17th through the 20th in the rolling green hills of Boone, North Carolina. This is with Matthew Wood, and it is based on the topic of his latest book, A Shamanic Herbal, which you can find here linked. And if you click on Join Us for the event, you'll land on the Art of Living Retreat Center Shamanism and Herbalism event page. You can find out all about Matthew's retreat, but there will be plant journeying, plant walks, meditations in nature, and lots of chatting and conversing about shamanic storytelling and animal medicine. So highly encourage you to check that out. And if you can travel or if you live nearby, then it's the perfect opportunity to learn in person. And if you're curious about animal medicines and shamanism, then you might want to get your feet wet with this free lesson on animal medicines, which you can click on learn more on the banner at the top of the page. With that being said, I'm going to hand over to Matthew and Rixt for the interview on the low dosage methodology in herbal medicine.
Hi, Rixt. You're in New Zealand right now?
Mm-hmm. I beg your pardon?
You're in New Zealand right now, right?
Yes, I am. Yes, in the far north.
Ah, okay. All right. And like near Wellington or the capital or something on the North Island, or?
I'm on the North Island, right at the top of the North Island.
Way up there.
Yeah, way up top.
Yeah, okay. And you are a practicing herbalist, I believe.
I've been a medical herbalist and practicing for the last 35 years. Yeah, and also an aromatherapist.
Okay. Yeah.
Everything to do with herbs, batch flowers or bark flowers, everything to do with herbs.
Yeah. Yeah, my cousin married a New Zealander and moved to New Zealand, but he's shipped off to another world now. But that was Julian Winston. She ran a school, a homeopathy school down there, more near Wellington or something. I don't remember the name. I can't remember now. It's been a while since I've seen her. She did visit us in Minnesota. And she was very much into, or may still be, what do they call it? Organotherapy, where they use herbs pretty much in small doses, kind of from Burnett and that tradition, and Dr. Cooper. Yeah, and I don't remember, it started with a T, I think, where they lived, but I do remember that he would talk about driving, he said to work, but I mean, he didn't really have a job there. I don't know what, maybe to their office or something. And he would see where they had built a castle for, I don't know, Minas Tirith for Tolkien or something. Or one day he looked up on the mountainside and there was a whole castle there that hadn't been there before.
So where it means, yeah.
So yeah. Okay. So you have also some New Zealand ancestry of the native peoples, right? I think you say in the.
No, I'm actually, I mean, I have a New Zealand passport, but I'm actually not a New Zealander.
Oh, well, what is that Waka Papa ancestry?
Waka Papa. Waka Papa is the word for your genealogy. It's the Maori word in Te Reo, the Maori word for your genealogy. So my genealogy goes back to, my mother is from Holland. She's Frisian. And my father is Dutch Indo, so he was born in Indonesia.
Yeah, in part Indonesia.
So
like quite a few people. Yeah.
Yes. So he immigrated to New Zealand, to Holland, and then both my parents and my family immigrated to New Zealand. But I've been here for a very long time.
Did your father go through World War II in Indonesia?
Yes, it was really hard. And my mother also went through World War II in Holland, and she would be
too.
Yeah, she was a teenager, but she would cycle around and for the not the rebellion, what do you call it? She used to carry messages everywhere, secret messages. Yeah, and my father was also in Indonesia, a hard time. He was supposed to have been put in a camp, but they hid him. He was the only boy who was hidden.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, he experienced a lot, both of them.
Yeah, I have a friend whose family lived through Singapore, and her father, I don't know, I like history. Her father ran a small manufacturing plant, and the Japanese put him in charge of slave labor manufacturing, and he finally came to him and said, all the workers are going to die if you don't, we can't produce anything unless you put up the food rations. So they did. I don't know how many people died anyways, but and then her grandfather got out. Her grandfather was the main arms smuggler between Britain and Mao. So their family was well regarded. They weren't particularly communist, but they were well regarded by the communists. So pretty intense. So at any rate, yeah, my family were Quakers for 10 generations and a pacifist on my mother's side. So yeah, I don't know. We haven't, but we were involved in the Civil War and in the Revolution. So yeah.
And I believe it sort of trickles down, because you look at life differently when your parents have been through a war or have experienced those type of things. And I think later on in life, you realize more fully the impact that actually had and what they actually must have experienced. Hey.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, then how did you happen to get into herbalism then, talking about personal history?
Well, I was a heavy smoker, roll my own cigarettes, drinking lots of Coca-Cola, and not really. And I used to work on a horticulture business and spray my bare feet with sprays and all that sort of stuff, no clue really. And I got really sick, and I ended up with so many different things like glandular fever and gout at the age of 21. All sorts of things. Yeah, a majority of illnesses, which in hindsight was very good because it made me a much better therapist. And nobody was able to help me. And unfortunately, my mum, when she came to New Zealand, was very homesick and ended up being committed. And so automatically I was put on a pile of, she must be like her mother. So anyway, I ended up going to a natural therapist and a herbalist, and I got results. And that really is how it got me into it. And I just decided to study it just for my children, never thinking I was going to be a herbalist, because I thought, oh my gosh, I don't want to listen to all these people moaning to me all the time, but I love it now. So, that's exactly what I do. And I love listening to people's stories. It's my life now. Yeah.
I just appreciate it in her book. I really like it because she quotes me some. You do, of course, but I never met her, and she would say how pine, the Dr. Bach's flower remedy for guilt and shame. She said when somebody blames themselves for being sick, or when they kind of won't fess up, there's something they just are hiding, and finally she says, you're hiding something, and she says, I don't really care what it is. You don't need to tell me, but we got to acknowledge this.
It's a good one, isn't it? I think a lot of people need pine, don't you? I mean, there's a lot of people who carry guilt with them or have been told to feel guilty.
Yeah, well, it's also, its physical properties are pretty good too. It's the source of pycnogenol. I don't think you need to buy pycnogenol. You can just, pine grows them. I don't know, there probably are pine in New Zealand, but there certainly are pine just about every continent.
Yeah.
And I know they grow pine in New Zealand. I don't know if they're native there, but
I know they're not native, but we grow a different pine for the tree for the building, but we on our own property have the original bark flower pine. It's beautiful. It's like it's got different spines, and it's just beautiful. It's open, it's like
pine.
A big hug, really. Yeah, different.
Yeah, well, so I liked where she said, I don't really care what you say, like what your information is. And I'm that way too. It's like, I don't want to hear it. I just got to know, okay, you're angry or you're depressed, or you're melancholic, which is a little different from depressed, or you're, whatever. So I just want to know the class that the emotions are in. They can tell me some if they want, but if they keep on talking, I just say, could I look at your tongue? And even online, that kind of stops things. And they also begin to realize, oh, you're not just interested in the talk and the story, you're interested in the physical symptoms too. So at any rate, so you got interested in herbalism, became an herbalist. Did you go to an herb school there, or?
I did. Very, very early on. I was actually carrying my first child at that time. And it was interesting because I'd only been in the course for a year when a close friend of mine, who's a homeopath, Johnny, was teaching classes for local community classes. And he asked me to join him. And I said, but I'm a student. He said, doesn't matter. You can just tell them you're a student. So after not even having been studying for a year, I ended up teaching already. But it was the best thing I ever did, because students would ask me questions and I'd say, I don't know, but I'll find out next week. And so I learned so much. Wow. Yeah. And so I was teaching very early on and loved it, and learned along the way while I was teaching. So I studied at South Pacific College of Natural Therapeutics, and at the same time, I also studied at Claire Anthony for aromatherapy, because to me, aromatherapy, batch flowers, flower essences, and herbal medicine are all the same thing. And originally they were all the same thing. It's just working with herbs in different modalities. So I wanted to learn it all.
Yeah, well, that's actually why I started using small doses, is because I felt, hey, it's all the same thing. The herb, whether you use it homeopathically or herbal, based on the herbal indications, or the Bach flower essences, or later the gemotherapy, say, the plants have the properties, not the method of preparation. Mm-hmm. So I felt that like drop doses, 1 to 5 drops, 1 to 3 drops, was in the middle, kind of between everybody.
Yes.
And that was actually why I started. It's kind of a political statement. I'm not much of a politician, but it was not actually so much because I believed in small doses. Well, I did because of homeopathy and the Bach flower essences, and I wasn't worried. And I was a specificer. It's not a better name. That's the old German name from the Renaissance. Specificer, someone who uses specific remedies on specific dose, on specific indications. And for that, you almost always, most of the traditions, you do use a lot less in small doses. So that all fell together. Mm-hmm. I would say definitely you can use big doses. I mean, herbs are more and more like food. The bigger you use, and some herbs are a lot like food. So, or some herbs you just put in your food all the time, even if you could use them in drop doses. So culinary herbs and whatnot. So you had an early exposure to homeopathy, and that might explain why you use small doses, perhaps.
No, our college taught only drop dosage.
Oh wow, that's unusual.
Yeah. So that was how we were all originally educated, in drop dosage, by a person called, our tutor was Sue Woods. She actually now lives in America. Actually, she moved there a few years ago, and Sue Woods was an amazing herbalist, and she learned from her grandfather and her mother, and in actual fact, all her family were in government, and during those 80s and early 90s, the medical herbalists were nearly put into the government and were recognized, because her brother was a well-known politician, and so was her grandfather. So and they owned natural health companies, like Sanitarium, and I think it was. Not 100% sure. Wow. So she taught us all in drop dose, but our drop doses were even lower than that. And her drop dose, her history doesn't actually come from homeopathy. It actually comes from England, and from her grandfather, from Mr. Eggleton, that she worked with, who was with the Hydes. And so it's interesting, because the Hydes in England currently still use drop doses just as well. That whole generation. Okay, even though he wrote the British Herbal Pharmacopoeia, he used actually King's as a guide reference, and they used drop dosage in their clinic for years. And I wrote to them recently, and they said they still use drop dosages as well. So it's quite interesting. But Sue Woods was really a phenomenal teacher, and she taught many of our generations. It wasn't until the 90s when all these other company supported and other mindsets came along that mil dosage or ounces were the norm.
Let me just tell people who the Hydes would be. That would be Fred Fletcher Hyde, who lived to be about 100 and was president or whatever of NIM, of the National Institute of Medical Herbalists, for many years. So, and he came from a family that was well established as herbalists in England, as NIM, as Institute Herbalists for several generations. And his father sent him to pharmacy school so that he would, they didn't have any pharmacists or medical doctors or anybody in NIM, and they kind of wanted to get a little more scientific, quote unquote. So they adopted so what you see, like David Hoffman would be the perfect representative. His new holistic herbal or holistic herbal would be the perfect representative of what was 70s, 80s, post World War II, what they were aiming at making a type of herbal medicine that was more scientific, and the way in which it was scientific. So it was based on the broad categories of medicinal constituents like tannins instead of gallic acid or tannic acid or whatnot. Tannins, bitters, certain, terpenes, maybe monoterpenes, some, and this is all familiar to most people nowadays, mucilages, et cetera. So they use that, and that's how David Hoffman's herbal is organized, or how the properties are explained. And he and Amanda McQuaid, she graduated, and they came over to the United States, and they taught at the herb store where I worked. That was the second class that he'd ever given in the United States. And at the end of the class, end of the weekend, I say, "Gee, David, thanks for teaching the energetics of the herbs." And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, I don't believe in energetics." And I was aghast, what's going on here? I can't understand it, because he gave such specific portraits for how to use the plant, because he knew these properties so well. Like, I remember elecampane, so it's a bitter, so it settles the stomach. It's warming, spicy bitters that act on the lungs, get secretion going, expectorant, but it's for kids that swallow the mucus and get an upset stomach. Well, that's really specific. And I don't know if he said green mucus. That would have made it even more specific. He probably did. I just quickly learned that. But so that means bacteria, infection. It's an antibacterial. Well, that all fit together very, very thoroughly. And boom, I understood elecampane right from the start. And kids with ear infections, maybe something that's gone on for a long time, might also respond to it. So, but he didn't think of himself as either a specificer or a energetic herbalist, but he was. About 20 years later, I was able to explain that to him. He didn't say anything. And it's interesting, his background. I don't know if you know this, but so Fred Fletcher Hyde and all the old guard, and they were still in power in those days, and they set up a scholarship for a young person, like in their 20s. This is the hippie generation that would learn their system and represent it to the next generation. And who should win it but David Hoffman? Well, you could not find a better person.
No, he's amazing.
Yeah, he believed in the system. He loved it. He taught it. He was a good writer, well loved. He's really kind of somebody who doesn't like to socialize, get out there, so people don't see him much. But he was the perfect person. But he said, so he was kind of the first of the hippie generation. This might be the late 60s even, who became a Nim herbalist. And he said, oh, the meetings were so they would have conferences. He said, oh, they were so boring. So their conferences, there'd be a bunch of men in suits and women in black dinner dresses, and they'd talk and he couldn't understand them because they all talked. They were like physiomedicalists that totally imbibed physiomedical, like learned all their stuff from. If you've ever read,
and he just couldn't understand them.
no, The Philosophy of Physiomedicalism by what's his
Yeah.
name, Joseph Thurston. And I mean, it's like a language, a secret coded language that a lot of them spoke. The Yorkshire people, especially. He said, "Well, so that's so different from all of our conferences that we've had ever since then."
Well,
yeah.
Matthew, I met David when he came to New Zealand.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And he came to New Zealand when it was all being changed to higher dosages and very academic and clinical trials and testing on bunnies and rabbits and sort of thing. And many herbalists at that conference were despairing because we were thinking, where is the holistic point? Where is this all going? And then David came to talk. And of course, it was exactly like you said. Everybody was wearing suits, but David came just as he is himself. And I wrote that in my book. I wrote this story in my book, and it was just amazing because he said it's about the herbs. It's about the herbs. It's not about active constituents, about the herbs. And it was just like a breath of fresh air, and everybody just felt so relieved that he was there. It was just amazing. It was amazing.
Yeah. So all that other stuff can be helpful, but is the herbs. They are individuals. They are like people. And in fact, that was at Herbal Lucy Jones, a working herbalist dispensatory. And she says that the individual herb, she has portraits, and her formulas are very simple. Once you're working that way, even if you work with bigger doses, excuse me, you don't have very complicated, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 herbs at the most, perhaps, because they are individuals, and you see what they do, and you don't need to throw a whole bunch in there just because you don't really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. So that's the background. So when I got going, there were no schools. There were no schools for a long time. We were outside the Commonwealth, so we didn't herbalism survived in the Commonwealth much more. I mean, there were definitely practicing herbalists.
It depends where.
Well, Canada. I mean, here in New Zealand.
The Commonwealth. You mean like the British monarchy
Empire
countries? Yeah.
So it survived in Britain with the Nim Herbalists. It survived more as folk art in Ireland, not tied in with Nim because, of course, that was English. And it survived in Canada. It was really wiped out in the United States, except for the South, the old Confederacy, partly because the Confederate States, during the Civil War, they couldn't get whiskey and turpentine, and they probably made their own to some extent, but they couldn't get chemical drugs or what would you say, like quinine. So, I mean, in 1860, a doctor used about 5 drugs. Do
you think also it had to do because those bottom states, the southern states, were really originally Mexico, so they still were living a lot with their Mexican medicines too?
No, that would be the Southwest. That would be New Mexico and Arizona. New Mexico, very strong herbal tradition, and that is why. They did a survey. They found that 90% of the Indians used herbs, 70% of the Hispanics who are not, a lot of them would be insulted to be called Mexicans. A lot of them are Mexicans, though, but the native are Nuevo Mexicano, but they call themselves Spanish. They only were under Mexico for 8 years, so they were Spaniards, and then the gringos used maybe 30-40%. So the usage levels were very high there, but that would be unusual. But otherwise, in the southern states, that was part of the British, that's American Revolution, all that. And but they, what can you say, like in the north, it's like, what do the scientists say? In the south, it would be, so I don't care what the scientists say. What did my granny say? So whether you're black or white or Indian, there's maybe more Indians up there too, down there too. But they would follow their traditions much more than they do in the north. So herbalism survived there, and that would be a good representative would be Phyllis Light. And yeah, so in the north there, we didn't know any Southern herbalists. Phyllis, I got to know her about 1999 or 8. First Southern herbalist I'd ever met, or any of us had ever met, probably. So we were all a bunch of people rebelling against science. We had to teach ourselves, and there really was nobody that knew all that pharmacology and whatnot. And we pretty much had to teach yourself. And you go to conferences, you learn a little from this person, from this person, from this person. And well, William Lasassier, he was a generation ahead of everybody. He was a great herbalist. And
Who was that?
William Lasassier. Mm-hmm. And he was actually a Texan, but he was a Southerner. In fact, I mean, that's where his first hints came to. But he lived in New York City, and he was a Cajun originally. That Lasassier is French, but he was an American. He was a Northerner culturally, but he really knew his herbs incredibly. But he left no writings to any great extent. We're trying to edit what writings he did leave and tapes, and we'll get that out there eventually. He was a genius, an incredible practitioner. So there was him, Dr. Christopher, but he was a Mormon, and he didn't really, the hippies didn't really study with him. I would say they were the two practitioners in the 70s and 80s. And I mean, that was about it. And
wow.
Yeah. So, and Dr. Christopher was arrested 35 times. That's because he wore a suit coat. William was never arrested because he just had long hair and t-shirt and stuff. But and that's how, and then I learned mostly from homeopathy, but I began to study the eclectics and the physiomedicalists. The eclectics that's Dr. John King that you were talking about, Fred Fletcher Hyde. And they were small dosers, and they are less than a drop. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be like 10 drops in an ounce or something.
I know. And like your Scudderism too. John Scudderism. Yeah. And then from there in New Zealand, we have James Neal, Dr. James Neal, who actually he was taught at under Scudder, and he was a Scottish guy, and he used to travel to Scotland and Australia and New Zealand and teach there as well. So I think that might be partially how drop doses may have somehow eventuated or infiltrated as well. But at the same time, though, Matthew, I'll have to say that worldwide, that I've done all the international research, worldwide dosages were never high or low. They were just person specific. And so some countries, when you talk to them about high doses, they're just absolutely horrified that you would even give so much. They're like, what are you doing? Because they don't even realize that their drop dosage is not normal,
No.
It is normal, but classed by some people not to be normal.
Well, that's what's very strange about Nim, if Fred Fletcher Hyde was in charge of all that. Well, they did I got a master's degree in herbal medicine in 2003 or 4. I graduated from the Scottish School of Herbal Medicine, and I was American. There was Canadian, and then 8 Brits, I think, and 8 English. That would be one Irish, 7 English. And so one of them did a paper on pulsology. Did I send you her paper, Mary?
Yes, absolutely. She sent it to me, and she was at the Scottish Herbal College, and back then the whole Scottish College, run by Keith and his wife, were drop dosage. Yeah.
And so she did a study. She interviewed. So she'd been raised in the Nim bunch, and they were using these huge, 10, 20, 36. 60 milliliters. I mean, like just massive doses. And so she tried to find out where that came from. And what she found at first, nobody could remember. And then finally she found that people just made it up. They
did just make it up. That's exactly what it is.
It's not based on.
They just made it up.
Yep. Right.
No. It's totally based on It actually started going up when the Lloyd brothers got their pharmacy, and they were funded by the Rockefellers and the Carnegians, I think, the rich families. They funded them. So when Scudder still wanted to do low dosage, he was publicly criticized. And other people who worked in that field as well were publicly criticized. And so it never eventuated. So to be honest, I think a lot of it may well stem back to, or may stem back to, more monetary gains. And so all clinical trials were then done in higher and higher dosages. And I've got it in my book. You can see how it went up and up and up.
Oh.
I mean, I'm not saying that's definitely the only reason, but it certainly seems to be a very strong undercurrent.
Yeah, I don't know that Scudder was heavily criticized by the Eclectics themselves, maybe by other people, because as almost all of them said, and in their histories, they said he saved the eclectic medical movement. It was dying because it had no theory, and he added his theory, which was specificity. And he died in 1892, so he didn't really live into modern times. I mean, he did set up the Lloyd brothers, but they'd only been in business for 10, 20 years, and Lloyd lived to 1939. So yes, Lloyd was very important in the regular, ordinary pharmacological world, and he built the Lloyd Extractors, which are these, it looks like a mad scientist laboratory if you've ever seen one, with tubes and funnels and everything all over. They're about yay big. There's one at the University of Minnesota under glass, and there's only 2 that operate in North America. There may be only 2 in the world, because it ended up that everybody just sent all their samples to these 2 places, because it was just so complicated. But at any rate, so the Lloyd extractor is still used to purify, to get what is the pure constituent or ingredient. And yeah, they did do that a little under Scudder, but they really got more going in the 20th century, which is after he died. And there still were, all the major books, the King's Dispensatory, 1898, Ellingwood, 1919, they're really still pretty Scudderian, pretty unabashed. But Harvey Wilkes Felter, about 1927, he's kind of trying to make peace with the allopaths a little bit. But then in 1930, the FDA Food and Drug Act was passed in 1936, and they just put the Eclectic Institute out of business in 1939. And by that point, the graduates in 1939, most of them couldn't get licensure in any state. So some of them, the early naturopaths, many of them were Eclectic graduates. And so, like Dr. Bastyr, that Bastyr College is named for, he was Eclectic. And the book about him by William, can't remember his name now, beautiful guy, he died some 20 years ago, 15. But he based on interviews or on his teachings, he was a total eclectic, small dose, etc. Now, Bastyr, of course, is, and the naturopathic profession's gone totally corrupt. Way less holistic than Nim with the big doses. They just use the, 10 or 20 or 30 stereotype, pycnogenol or, extracts or turmeric, curcumin. That's what they're taught. So they've really turned their back on any type of really herbalism. They've kicked homeopathy out of the curricula. And so that's what always happens, this corruption. And then finally, it costs so much, the education, students can't afford to pay back. And they've kind of turned Bastyr into a nursing college, because nobody can afford to become a naturopath anymore. So at any rate, again and again, we see this materialization where these people that are really political.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, come in and try to and change it to what is acceptable to allopathy. Yeah, so yeah. There's a general background on Western herbalism. But you found all sorts of traditions everywhere, people using small doses everywhere. Do you want to describe some of the more interesting ones?
Well, it's quite interesting when I researched my own country where I was born, the Netherlands, the various ways of looking at herbalism and how it was actually outlawed until 1994.
Wow.
And so when I spoke to a professor, she said, well, before a certain time, there was no such thing as herbalism. It was homeopathy. And I couldn't quite comprehend it. But what she meant is that the herbalists went underground and called themselves homeopaths because they weren't allowed to practice as herbalists.
Yeah, wow.
And even when I went back there before the 1994, I mean, it was really quite interesting how the response I got from family as far as and friends, particularly, and people around me when I told them I was a herbalist. But anyway, so the way that it goes over there is that they sort of have like three categories. They have a kruidenvrouw, which means a herb woman, a phytotherapeut, which means a phytotherapist, and a herbalist, which means a herbalist. And they all are in three different categories. So a herbalist is somebody who learns about herbal medicine, works in drop dosage, and mainly is in an educational role. Unless they learn anatomy and physiology alongside it, they can then prescribe. A phytotherapist is one who has who goes through a college as well, but more for treatment, and they're more based on the high mill dosages, and they've gone more to Simon Mills and Kerry Bones type of dosing,
or Rudolf Weiss, for example.
Yeah. And then you have the kruidenvrouw, which are the herbalists who have learned via apprenticeship. So they do 4 or 5 apprenticeship and get taught by all different herbal women, whether it be family or not. And they live in with the herbalists. So they also work in drop dosage. So the majority still work in drop dosage because I was in contact with people at the association in Holland as well. But the interesting thing is how every country makes their tinctures differently. So, for example, here in New Zealand, I don't know how you do it in the US, to be honest, but I presume the same. When they make an extract that is a 1-to-1 or 1-to-2, meaning 1 part herb and 1 part alcohol, if they make a hydroalcoholic extract, that meaning with alcohol, then you just weigh it and then put, say, for example, equal amounts to the amount of fluid and let it trickle through. But in the Netherlands, what they do, they weigh the dried herb before it gets powdered, and then they powder it, then they weigh it again. And so, for example, was it hawthorn? One of the herbs, I can't remember which exact herb it was, but anyway, by the time they weigh it as a powder, they work out the ratio. So then the ratio is 36 parts herb to 1 part fluid. It's seen as a 36-to-1. Do you understand what I'm saying? So they weigh the herb and then they calculate it as a dried herb weight, not as a powdered herb weight. The other thing is too that so many countries use different parts, and like, for example, in Holland, if you make a root tincture, then the strength of the alcohol has to be higher because they say otherwise it won't excrete the active constituents. And for example, hawthorn in Holland is hawthorn flowers, while we are taught hawthorn berries. They use hawthorn flowers. There's so many differences, and this was so interesting when I was researching this. There were so many differences in dosing, and so many different laws and rules, and different ways of making herbal tinctures, and what they say will work and what they say don't work, or you have to do it this way, you have to shake it this way, or you have to do that the other way. Everything is so different that there is no set way. It's just different. So there's no wrong or right way. It's just different.
Yeah.
Because they all need success,
Right.
Yeah. Because I remember you saying, Matthew, to me, and I totally agree with you, because I think exactly the same. You say, I don't care what dosage people use as long as it works, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, It's
And
not about low or high doses. It's just what dose works.
Yeah, Scudder said that too. So he appeared with his system, and it caused a huge uproar, of course, and there were many people who were established in the old method. And he said, wait, don't worry, like, use whatever works. I'm not trying to replace anybody.
No.
I'm just adding a new thing that's systematic. And he really did take the field pretty quickly, because they did have such a chaos of ideas at that time. And I mean, that was 1860, 1840 to 1860, the Eclectic. I mean, that's a medical chaos period. It's interesting what you say about the touch there, because I don't know, you read my book. So Worcester Beach, the founder, who's considered basically the founder of the physiomedicalists, although he kind of disappeared early in the whole scene, but he apprenticed with an herbalist in New Jersey named Jacob Tidd, or Jakob Tidd. And so that would be German or Dutch or
German.
German. Okay, I wasn't sure, but so you got your same. I mean, it sounded like a couple years of apprenticeship with him. So you have your same method there, and that began the eclectics. The physiomedicalists built on his work, and that was, I mean, in the in the late 1700s, early 1800s, it still was apprenticeship. In fact, Scudder went to a school, but he did apprentice quite a bit with a old Quaker doctor, William Thorne. That would be a relative of mine. And there still was apprenticeship going on in the 1820s, 1800s, and there just weren't a lot of medical schools, like one or two or three. And that was pretty well established. Yeah. So,
but don't you think that apprenticeships are actually a very good idea?
Oh yeah, I'm not saying no. I'm not against
it. You learn so much more.
Oh yeah, I'm just saying that's what they did. Yeah. They didn't have a choice. Yeah. So, okay, so we have some of, and I imagine the Nim people too, that they learned. I mean, like the greatest book from the kind of late 19th century generation of Nim people, I think, is Richard Hoole. Have you read Richard Hoole's book?
Sorry, what people did you say? I couldn't quite catch that.
The Nim British herbalists. Nim, they actually were NAM at that time. Nim.
Okay.
Institute of Medical Herbalists. So Richard Hoole, his books are published about 1919 to 2000 to 1922, and he learned from his mother, and he sold herbs in the street, and he has a great story where he's selling, and some of the postal workers come from the post office, and they say, well, one of our coworkers has cholera and it's collapsed, and that would be like dysentery, diarrhea everywhere, or vomiting too, and we've observed you and we think you seem to be an honest person. What would you give? And he says, well, wood betony. And which kind of surprised me, but it's a great stuff. Oh no, it was black horehound. And and which does go right to the solar plexus and stuff. And they're cousins anyways. And they came back a couple hours later and said, yeah, that was great. It really helped him. He's back to sorting mail again. That was 1859. So, and probably a T there. Let's see. So, Netherlands, Germany would be a place with a lot more laws, I think. But then they're legal there. And there's this strange thing that herbalism was made legal, and naturopathy, by none other than Adolf Hitler. And these laws are still on the book. And in fact, David Hoffman was once speaking, and somebody started to yell at him, like talk over him, saying that he was a Nazi for being an herbalist.
Wow.
I mean, it just happens that Hitler was a health food person and liked herbs. So they're protected. They have pretty good law for naturopathy.
Yes, and they actually have done a lot of clinical trials on certain combinations that are all in drop dose. They are very, very low dosages. When you work out how much is in the combination of each herb, it only works out like 2 or 3 drops per dose. So there's a lot of clinical trials done on different combinations, which you can. I've put that in my book as well for people to look at. Yeah, it's really interesting how much research they've done. Russia is another country that's done a lot of research. I mean, there's so much history in Russia; it's amazing. And they work in low doses. They work in drop dosage too. So it's interesting.
I would say, there may be more countries, but Germany, Russia, and Poland all love herbs and have gone to great lengths to keep those traditions alive, and would never dream of closing people down. Whereas, France, they were made illegal. The Vichy around 1944, they made herbs. Herbalists were legal up till then. 1944, they made them illegal. That's why Maurice Messager, who began practice in 1945, he was arrested 35 times. Probably the most influential, influential herbalist in post-world he died about 2000. He lived to be 100. Some of these herbalists lived to be forever.
Wow.
Yeah, and he died about 2010 or so. But and his main method was foot baths. He used dried herbs and foot baths.
Yeah.
And he was taught by his father. And he talks about his father showed him the herbs, and he eventually, when things changed after World War II, he bought the woods. It belonged to some nobleman, but he bought the woods that his father had shown him all the herbs. And one thing that he recounted that was really interesting, you know how chelidonium is named for the swallows, because supposedly the swallows put it on the eyes of the babies when they're stuck glued closed with a bunch of junk in there. And he said his father, well, that's in the folklore, but he said his father took him out and they lay on the ground and watched as the swallows went and got the chelidonium and rubbed it on the eyes of the little babies.
Well, you know how you were saying about the foot baths, right? Well, of course, you had the German friar Kneipp, Kneipp people, and he was the great water bath person, but he also had herbal tinctures, and I actually have an original bottles at home here, and they're all in drop dosage too. That was in drop dosage, But low dosage, as you are well aware, is we're talking about drop dosage, but drop dosage is really only for the alcoholic medicines, because low dosage it trickles into everything, doesn't it? You use less for herbal infusions, you use less for decoctions, you use less in your creams, and still get the same results, right?
Yeah. So, and when you begin to compare the oil, the salve, the lotion, the tincture, the tea, the extract versus the tincture, the different teas, fresh, dried, it's the herb. It's not the method of preparation. It's the herb and the practitioner. And in regular medicine, they train all the doctors to practice the same and to adhere to the same code. Like, this is what's official medicine right now, and if you're not doing it, then you lose your license. Whereas we have no choice, but we just educate everybody as best we can to do what they do best, and they all become different. Although I always say after 15 years, all herbalists will agree, and that's true of everybody but the dogmatic, big dose scientific types. They won't agree because their way they think is better. But otherwise, everybody comes to the same conclusions, because even if they didn't use the same herb as somebody else, when they hear the other person talking, it's like, oh, I understand completely. I understand how that works. It just goes on and on. At about 15 years, you know what you're doing. And at 25 years, unfortunately, you're beginning to get a little sick of the people. And I say this, everybody I've known who's been a veterinarian, even a lot of herbalists, doctors, a lot of them retired about 25 years. It's kind of hard after that sometimes. Depends on how much you just love people and the herbs.
How long have you been a herbalist now, Matthew?
Let's see, about 43, 44 years.
Yeah, you've got a few years on me then.
Oh, yeah. And then I did get kind of sick of it at 25 years. And I did move to the country, and I just made my practice much smaller. Anybody can get in touch with me, but I don't have a shingle. I just mostly see people online, or still a couple of people in Minneapolis. But I kind of left the Minneapolis, St. Paul world to my students. And a couple of them are full-time practitioners that support their families as herbalists. So herbalism is well-founded, and another difference here I did want to mention here. Generally, the Mediterranean countries, they use the above ground part. They use the beautiful scents. I mean, who's want to dig up, rosemary roots or lavender roots? I mean, who would ever do that? I mean, you wouldn't think of it. And then in Northern Europe, the green man, they like the green part. The word herb means the green part. It means the part that comes every year, whether it's a perennial or an annual, the part that's green. That's the meaning in Latin of herba, yerba, whatever. And then North America, the Indians like the roots and barks. So over here, if you said roots and barks, people might label you as a Southerner, or maybe not. I mean, that was just kind of that's what they said, roots and barks. And that's because they would watch the bear. The bear was the totem animal of the herbalist, and digging things up with his claws or ripping off the barks. So they copied the bear, and they use the roots and barks as teas, of course. Now, what's interesting is that's very similar to the Chinese, and I just can't help but feel there's some similarity. The Chinese ultimately may have learned from animals again like that, and from the bear, or they just had a Siberian common origin, perhaps, because like roots and barks too. So.
And in Unani medicine, there's quite a bit of roots and barks too. I can't remember the exact name they used for the word herb. I can't pronounce it, but it actually means roots and bush and bark. That's what it actually means. It's quite interesting. Yeah. It's really interesting, and I mean, just like you, I enjoy history too, and I could have spent so much more time writing on history, but I had to put a limitation to it somewhere. Yeah. But it's actually very fascinating how the history in most countries is very similar. Pardon? Yes, it's 600 and something pages long. I said you can use it for many different things. It makes a good herb press, It
would probably be a good weapon.
That's I've already said that to a class. I said, if you don't like somebody, you can hit them over the head. At least it's useful for something, eh?
So how about in New Zealand, the indigenous practices there? Did they use small herbs, the Maori people, or do you know much about
Yes, I do know quite a bit about the native indigenous herbs, but I don't actually share it because I've been taught the traditional ways, and I've been blessed to have been taught by elders, but it's not my place as a non-Maori to share the knowledge. I can share things about the kawakawa and the kumaro because and the manuka, because everyone already knows that, and it's colorism in class. But they were primarily using decoctions and infusions and steaming, and they used bird fat to make their creams with, or later on wild pig fat. So you'll find, as you probably know, Matthew, the majority of indigenous people and herbalism within the world is primarily water-based medicine, not many people use alcohol-based at all. In actual fact, like the Aborigines, alcohol doesn't go well in their bodies. It can kill them. They have a totally different DNA,
Same with American Indians too.
So yeah, most of it is water, or it's measured with a finger or a palm, or it's all measured in those sort of things. So a handful, or and so it's very imprecise. So it has been hard to figure out what dosing is, but really it is again person specific dosing. And so the Maori have an amazing array of herbalism and herbal remedies. And the herb is not just used physically, but also used emotionally and spiritually. So it has a much greater range. It's totally holistic, and very, very precious. But always harvesting with intent and prayer, special prayers, thanking the plant, thanking Mother Earth, thanking the forest, all that is really important. And I myself believe in that very strongly, that your intention and your respect for the plant world is very important for us, for the plant and for us and for the future generations. I mean, that's one of my biggest messages here, is to think about our future generations, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Those different, all plants act on the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual level. And as I learned from one of my Native American teachers, Tismal, and he really illustrated it. And then on the magical level, like
that's right.
Herbs can change the reality around them. The best example of this is agrimony, which can sort out hierarchical problems, like people telling the boss, telling the employees the wrong thing, the employee stealing from the boss, whatever, the landlord and the tenant. I've never seen it fail. It is the most reliable thing I know of in herbalism, is to use agrimony or cinquefoil, its cousin, to get those kinds of things correct. And there's other magical uses, but that's enough for me. That's so useful.
When I wrote in the book about all the different philosophies in herbal medicine, I came across 43, and I'm sure that's not all of them. And I also addressed the magical part of it, or, spirit dosing and all sorts of things. I addressed all those aspects of different ways of administering herbs, and with magic and what magic is. And I mean, I came across an article by a professor in Ireland, and he actually called herbalism magic. He said it's magic, and it's based. And so it was quite interesting how he said that, and how prayer is magic, because it's all to do with intention. And I'm not stating that I believe this or don't believe this. I'm just stating that's all the things that I found and came across, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
There's so many different ways to administer a herb, and where people have success,
Tismal defined it that way, but I remember another Indian Native American friend of mine, I invited him to teach in my class at the little herb store way back. This would be in the mid-'80s or something. Arlo Omaha, he's dead now. And so we sat down and he began, herbs work by magic and they don't work any other way. That is pretty true, because even if we had all the science and a whole bunch of, in vitro, in vivo studies and pharmacology and everything, and then you gave it, even if it's, and maybe the drop dose for a specific person also came to the same conclusion, and maybe the person's really open to it, but it's still, there's like something to get it to really click. It's magic, or the spirit or something. So,
and I think intention is very important. Your intention of the herb, and intention of yourself. I don't know if you found this, Matthew, and I found that when I moved, or when I talk to my clients, I usually ask them what herbs grow outside your window or around you. And whenever I move, my herbs, who don't usually grow up here naturally, just follow me, with me, and suddenly they're there. because I make the medicines with them. And so I always wondered how that might be a possibility, because every time I ask somebody, what grows underneath your bedroom window, it guaranteed is what they need, or the person who sleeps needs. It's kind of extraordinary. And so I came to this conclusion. And have you heard of the Wood Wide Web?
World Wide Web.
Yeah, and how all the plants, I got to this myself. I thought, what all these trees and plants and grasses have root systems, and I thought to myself, what if they're just an internet and communicating with each other?
Well, that's been proven now.
And it's been proven now. That's right. But I already came to that, and then it was proven, and then I suddenly thought, well, we walk on that. Yeah. So what if that is sensed through there as well, right?
Yeah.
And so actually, how the herb knows where to grow. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there.
Like old Dr. Christopher, he actually did recommend sometimes people walk on the earth barefoot. Although if you have moccasins, that might do it. But basically, walk on the earth some. And he actually gave symptoms like if you're getting headaches, head congestion, and you're constipated, then that means the energy that comes down through the top of the head from the spirit. He was a Mormon, but he evidently had some New Age ideas about it. But so it's like it comes down through the top of the head and is your creativity, and then you have to ground it in the earth, which is totally true. And if you're not doing that, then you can get a headache and constipation. So there's a specific indicator, and I did find that this worked actually for me one time when I was constipated, some congested head stuff. Yeah. I also wanted to mention Tismal. What did he say? I forgot now about something he said, that he always talked about what herbs were in people's yards and under their windows and appearing as they got sick. And he said, yes, the herbs are like little tin soldiers walking up to your door.
That's right. That's right. And that's why I think they sense it. They sense it somehow, and it's quite extraordinary and amazing. I mean, I know for a fact that herbs have feelings, because one thing I wrote in my book too is that when I was a young girl, and when I was 14, we had amazing science teachers. And one of the science teachers decided to do this experiment where we had 3 different tomato plants, you call them tomato plants.
Yeah.
And one of them, they blasted heavy metal music to it and would abuse it and tell them horrible things and how ugly it was. And the other one had classical music and they would love it to bits. And the other one, they would just, all of them were fed exactly the same nutrients, everything else. And, honestly, it was amazing. It made such an impact on us because we did that for 4 weeks. And when we saw the difference, the one that was just normal was a beautiful, healthy plant. The one that had been abused was stunted in its growth and just didn't grow at all. And then the other one that had all, how beautiful you are, was already getting little tomatoes. And it was just, it made such an impact on me. I'm like, oh my goodness, plants hear. They can actually feel and hear. And it just stayed with me for all those years. Yeah. And they did some phenomenal things, way out of the normal curriculum that those teachers.
The Secret Life of Plants. The Secret Life of Plants is the book about that.
Plants.
And
it
went on for a long time. There was a guy in Minnesota, Carlson, I can't remember, and this may still be available, but he found that your garden would grow twice as big, or just an enormous amount, maybe even more, if you played bird songs all the time. So he had speakers of bird songs. You could buy it from him, and the plants did just great with the birds. Now, I gotta say, it's interesting. I live in the middle of a corn desert, I call it. There's nothing but corn up there, and maybe soybeans and alfalfa and some wheat. Wow. But then in the valley here, there's no other place. I mean, you'd see no animals in the cornfields, nothing, and maybe deer running through if they're trying to get away. But they don't even like to feed in there anymore. But down in the valleys, that's where all the birds and the little animals, at least, and deer down here. The valleys are all green and hilly, and river and everything. So they can't grow really much in the way of crops down here. And so there's just so many birds. It's amazing. And I mean, just everything. When I was a kid, the Baltimore Orioles only nested in the big elms. Well, they were all eradicated by disease. Now they'll nest in other things, but then there's, red-breasted grosbeaks, and there's goldfinches. It goes on and on. There's so many different birds from you probably, but so many songbirds on here. Just beautiful. Woodpeckers, they peck on my house. So
that's amazing. So you talk about birds. I have my kaumātua, the elder of my hapu, of my tribe. She was telling me the story that Maori believe that they have a god called Tane Mahuta, which is the god of the trees and the birds. And the birds are the messengers to the spirit world. But the birds are needed, she said, to awaken the trees. And I thought, let me research this, because I know a lot of these so-called myths and legends actually are true, and you find they're true. So I researched it, and I thought, I wonder why they think that the birds are needed to awake the trees. Well, I came across a research, and I actually wrote there in my book too. I came across a research where it said that the vibrations of the bird song early in the morning is needed to open up the stomata in the plants to release oxygen for us to breathe. Now, isn't that friggin' amazing?
Yeah.
So the bird song is needed, that vibration, to open that up so it releases oxygen for us to leave. Just blew me away. I'm like, oh my goodness. And of course the traditional people already knew that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's
amazing.
Carlson's idea there. He died, so I don't know. Someone's probably carrying on that business, but yeah, it was rather well known in Minnesota. Well, let's see. Any other traditions of small dosing that are particular that you want to talk about at all, or?
Well, like I said, there's a lot more small dosing in alcohol and low dosing going on throughout the whole world that we realize and that we are led to believe. It's mainly Anglo-Saxon countries and some European countries that have decided to go in the high milliliter or high ounce dosages. There's a lot of clinical trials being done on low dosage. There's been a lot of, I've had so many herbalists, including you, writing my book about low dosage, giving case studies. And it's not about whether low dose versus high dose. It's about being specific with your dosage, being specific with your herbs, getting the right herb, and so so it's really the conclusion is that I was made, I don't know about you, but we were made to believe it's either low dose or high dose, and there's no difference. Then I find out so many different philosophies and so many dosing strategies all throughout the world. And then I find out that actually most of the world use low dosage. They start low. Yes, they can go up. And I'm not adverse to high doses. I sometimes give a high dose. It's whatever is needed. But the majority of the time, it's not needed. So that's really,
and sometimes you really got to be careful. I just have been helping this week somebody who's covered with welts all over, allergic reaction, and that's pretty bad. And I've been trying to help her. She on her own took lomatium, which causes welts, and she actually kind of made her sicker. Now, Lake Treats like it might be good, but not, but you just can't do it much. Well, so for her, I would not. She said, "Oh, should I take that?" I said, "Yeah, put one drop in a glass of water and sip it." And she was sensitive enough. Sometimes she could tell, like, "Oh, wow, well, I can feel it just opening the cap." And actually, when I'm taking the dose, I mean the pulse. I'll take the pulse, and I'm taking the pulse. Sometimes, if I think the right remedy, the pulse will change. Sometimes I have to unscrew the cap, maybe with the other hand, the pulse will change, but sometimes it doesn't. Then finally, I put it on the pulse. Maybe 70, 80% of the people, it changes, maybe 90 even. It changes when I put it on the pulse on the wrist. The pulse changes. Few people after a minute, and they're the Johnny-come-latelys. But if it's the right herb, you get that either when you think it, when you open the bottle, when you put a drop or two on, because 3 drops will cover a massive area. And that gives you some idea of how much little you need. You put 3 drops on the skin and you cover the whole all over the place.
And yeah, there was a herbalist that I spoke to in Holland, and she actually applies the herbs like a tattoo. She says she paints it on the skin.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I experimented with my class, and it's quite phenomenal, you know, how effective that can be just by applying the herbs on your skin, and you can already get changes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah, and then there's the matter of the repetition of the dose. And I got to say too, when it comes down to it, although regular medicine is very standardized, I mean there's no studies on, I mean, the people that respond to the herb, it's a bell curve. And basically if the number of respondees is 5% or more over placebo, then they can put it on the market in the United States. That's FDA. 5%.
Okay.
So that means that 32% of the people in the group reacted, and placebo, 27% reacted. Just, I'm getting a remedy from the doctors, but then the bell curve, that showed there's people that didn't respond, the people respond a little bit more height. Yeah, there's some people that really responded, then less and less. And, and then there's some people that got really bad responses. And so, I mean, and then they talk as if they're scientific about dosage and stuff. That's not possible. And as you know, you've had many clients that say, well, I'm sensitive to drugs, and so they have a hard time getting the doctors to reduce the dose, or they have to reduce the dose without telling the doctor. And, and then repetition too, very hard to tell how often to repeat, more so with an herb than maybe with a drug. But yeah, so yeah, by the way, as I hear tell reading, drug is a Dutch word or Netherlands language, or Flemish maybe. Originally,
when you go to a drogist, it's like a druggist, like a place where you get your drugs. Yeah, it's like a pharmacy kind of thing. Chemist.
Yeah, but originally I think the word drug meant herb or maybe a jar of herbs or something.
Yeah, I think it might. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know.
A lot of our words come from interesting places, and you have.
They do. Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Alberto threw in his good house singing to the plant. Yes, that fits right in with the bird song, and yeah. Well, let's see. One interest that you and I had in common was Dr. Cooper, Dr. Robert Cooper, and he was the extreme of low dose with herbs because, well, first he made, making your herb in a different way. So he would take the whole herb, bottle it in alcoholic spirits. That probably meant brandy.
With this arborvitae, you mean?
Yeah, and then he'd put it in the sunshine, and depending on how many hours it was in the sunshine, then it would be one level, first, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Probably couldn't get much more than that. 8th potency, how many hours it had been in. Let's see, we had a question there.
Someone was, he had arborvitae remedies, and he was a doctor. He was like a precursor to Dr. Batch, Edward Batch, wasn't he? Or Bach.
Yeah. So we can get into that. So, but his arborvitae remedy, he would use 1 drop. Mm-hmm. And not only that, he would not repeat it. He was like a homeopath.
That's right.
There's these cases, this guy who has stomach cancer, and he gives him 1 drop, and it's highly, upsetting and totally crazy to his stomach. And then about a month and a half later or so, he starts to get really in pain, and he comes back to Dr. Cooper, and Dr. Cooper takes a look at him. He says, "No, we only need that one drop." And the guy was cured. And we don't know that many remedies that he used. You did try to locate every writing by him, I believe.
Yes, I did. Yes.
Yeah.
I did go in some archives and things like that, but it was hard to find information on him.
Well, basically,
it's interesting because you actually brought my attention to him, and because it was LaHunt Cooper, his son, who was the friend with Edward Batch. Because he already did like the sun method. He did the sun method.
That was the bizarre thing. So I was a student at the University of Minnesota for 14 years. Took me to get my degree, and I was in the medical school stacks in the library, and there was the 1927 Homeopathic Congress notes, and there's this, and it's verbatim, and there's this lecture by LaHunt Cooper, and he starts out and saying, "Oh, I'm not sure if my friend Dr. Bach can make it or not. We'll see." And then he's talking about his father's remedies and how he's used them, and they're these arborvitae. They're so similar to the Bach remedies.
Totally.
And Dr. Bach was a friend of his.
Yes.
So that shows hidden relationships, and we don't know. Dr. Bach broke up his laboratory equipment and just abandoned everything, including his wife, and Mel, and
yes,
and went out, and so he didn't really leave much of a record as to where he got his ideas. We do know he was much influenced by James Tyler Kent, the homeopath, who was a fanatic on high doses, on the high.
But he was a very intuitive man. He was a very highly intuitive man, and he believed that it came through God to him. That's how he believed it. Yeah.
And then he linked up.
He was
with Nora Weeks, and we really don't know if she suppressed stuff or added stuff. But she, like, her biography as a hagiography is really a almost worshipful saint thing. And yet both you and I independently, we wondered if she didn't kill him and to take over the remedies, and with her new lover, Victor Boulin. So, and they lasted until 50s, 60s, 70s. Because he died then in the 30s. He was about 55, 6. That was pretty peculiar. I mean, I had that idea, and I thought it my own. I thought, I don't know what I'm picking up on here, and I want to talk about this to anybody else. Well, here I am. But I think it was you, or else it was somebody else from New Zealand. I know. Okay, it was somebody else from New Zealand who wrote me and said, "Is it possible that his assistant Nora Weeks killed him?"
he actually died in hospital.
Yeah, no, but I mean, what did he die of?
Cancer.
Oh, okay.
Well, they think. I think that's what was kept secret.
Okay.
They say that he died of a heart attack, but we'll never really know. We're just speculating here, really, aren't we?
So bizarre. I mean, I've never heard that about Hahnemann's wife.
The mysteries.
Of course, he was 86 or something. But yes, but that came to me, and it came to this other person, and they contacted me. Even more bizarre. Well, I don't know. She's not alive. I don't want to besmirch her reputation, but she wrote a terrible book about him in that she makes him insane. It's just and that book by Gregory Vlamis, Vlamis, where he actually interviews Bach's daughter, who hated him because she'd been abandoned as a 9-year-old or something, and her mother. I mean, this is 1930s. It's not.
But she didn't though. She came.
She what?
Yeah, but she came to the center years later. She came to the center years later.
Oh, okay. But she tells Vlamis that she hated him. Yeah, as a child and as an adult, and it felt really taken advantage of. I mean, what's a single woman and going from being a doctor's wife to being destitute, abandoned? Yeah, and I don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Have you been reading some of the comments that people have been making here? There's some really
Not
interesting
too many.
comments.
Do you want to read some then, or Alberto or someone?
Yeah, and Mel wrote, and some people that I know as well.
Oh, okay.
Yes, they are still making batch remedies, Mel.
Yeah.
They still are, totally.
Okay, that's political too. So the center continued making, but the actual heir to Victor Bullen and Nora Weeks was supposed to be Julian Barnard, and what would they be? The board of directors. After they died, they pretty much sold the company to Nelson's Homeopathics.
No, that's not true.
Okay, who runs it now?
Julian Barnard was, well, anyway, I maybe this is not the place to talk about it. We'll talk about it some other time, but that is actually not correct. Yeah, it's not correct, because I've been to the center and I've spoken to people, and I've done all the background.
Julian Barnard felt that he'd been ripped off, that he.
Oh yes, that's that part he believes is true. Yes, but yeah. Okay. But maybe this is not the place to talk about it right now.
Well, at any rate, his remedies are available through the Flower Essence Company in Nevada City, California. They believe his story. And I do have to say, when the Flower Essence people started, Richard Katz started a whole nother flower essence thing outside of the Bach Center. He was heavily criticized. They wrote stuff like, no, this is the canon, the 38. 36, whatever, 37 remedies. And I've even heard, I don't know, you would know here, you've investigated the history of everything, but then there's people who say that the last 12 remedies Dr. Bach did not work on as much and were not as solidly proven out as the first 24 or whatever, because he was dying. And
that's not true either.
Okay, what is the truth there?
No, that's not true either. He actually found those remedies really fast, and it really created a lot of physical for himself, because every time he would find the remedy, he would feel it physically as well as mentally. It was they certainly, if you look at the 38, they are a complete system of healing. And they can actually treat over 200 million states of mind if you combine them right. There are the batch center remedies are there as well, but there's also other batch that are really good. That the one that's put out by Julian Barnard is actually very good too. And then there's Crystal Herbs. They all put out different batch flower remedies, and they work just as effectively. And actually are less expensive. So it's up to you what you decide and which one you want. It's your choice. You need to go by what you feels right. I myself get them from Crystal Mountain actually, but everybody's different. Because he actually never wanted it to be called batch. They wanted to be called English flowers essences, and that wasn't named that until after he passed. And he actually put it out there for the world to use and for them to be able to make it themselves. It's a self-empowerment tool.
Well, Barnard actually is the one.
It's just become a by now, which I'm sure he would not be impressed with. I'm disappearing.
Yeah, Barnard is the one who.
Can you still hear me? Oh yeah.
Yes, I can.
Yes. So
Barnard is the one who calls his line English healing herbs. Yeah.
There was.
Yeah. Or maybe essences. So he did follow Dr. Bach.
Yeah. And there was a conflict and a separation, but it never got sold. It's actually owned by Julie Howard. She's the trustee, not owned. She's the trustee. Nobody owns it. And it wasn't sold out to Nelson either.
Okay.
They got a partnership with Nelson because the batch and was close to the family of Nelson's until they got it out there. But no, Nelson's has nothing to do with the original batch center anymore either.
Oh, I know that.
So
yeah. Okay. But they do. Nelson sells it now, don't they? Are they the main?
It's just a story, and it's all in there. And I think the most important thing is that they're very effective and they work, and that we use them appropriately, and they've been given to us to use in a different sense, but it's a flower essence. But I have to reiterate though, that low dosage has nothing to do with, it's not a flower essence, it's not an energy herb or energy only. I've done some lab tests on seal, or 2 drops per dose, and golden seal, got it all lab tested compared to normal herbal tinctures and different dosages, and there's still berberine and hydroxystrostine in there. There's still active constituents just in 2 drops of a dosage. So to say that low dosage is solely energetic is incorrect, just as it's saying that high dosage or heroic dosage is not energetic. It's also incorrect. It all has energy to it and an aspect to it. So low dosage is not really flower essences or homeopathy, because it's used with the materia medica of herbal medicine in itself. It's like used as a herbal, not a like for like with homeopathy. So I think there's a big confusion in the world that herbalism comes from homeopathy, while in actual fact it doesn't come from homeopathy. That's
pretty ignorant. Yeah.
It's a different way of
timeless.
prescribing herbs, which all in their own pace. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So herbalism is timeless. Herbalism is timeless.
I think
homeopathy was invented in like 1810, So herbalism is not descended from homeopathy. Now, it might be influenced by some, but I checked.
So we're getting perception here.
Okay, yeah.
Well, it's right. It's only young, isn't it? Homeopathy is only young.
Yes, right. But I also checked Dr. Scudder's Materia Medica against homeopathy, and I found that he did not get his specifics from homeopathy in any way whatsoever. There's no resemblance. They usually were established in the literature. It mostly, if you could give a antecedent, it would be Constantine Rafinesque, 1829 to 1828 to 9. And he got a lot of his knowledge from the Indians directly. And but it would be experience-based. It's what worked for various people. And Dr. Scudder was only about 32 or something, but he was a Civil War doctor. That means he may have seen 100,000 people, I mean, he may have had his hands full every single day, day after day. And he was invalided out in December 1864. So he didn't even make it to the end of the war before he had to go home and recover and get treated by his.
He was a surgeon, wasn't he? He was a surgeon, wasn't
he?
No,
he wasn't a surgeon. No.
Civil War.
No, he was a regular.
Okay.
Well, I haven't seen any records, but I would presume. I mean, they had regular doctors and they had surgeons. He wrote very little on surgery, so that would be surprising. Yeah, for all his, he was, he worked with drugs, quote unquote, of the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, but with you, just to let I'm Dutch, so most of you, I can answer sometimes indirect. I apologize if it's taken the wrong way, but that's just my personality. I'm sorry. That's just my personality. I sometimes, oh my gosh, people think that I'm upset and I'm not as upset, or I'm just the intensity of a Dutch person. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I don't know. It didn't seem like you're upset. Yeah. Okay. So, well, that
no, I'm not.
some questions. I still have some questions about the whole Bach thing, but at any rate, we do know that Dr. Cooper taught his son LaHunt Cooper, and LaHunt Cooper was a friend of Dr. Bach, and there's no question that the whole solar potentization. Now, another thing, I don't know if you know about this. I we may have talked about it, but it's fairly new, although all the way back to 2004 or 5. Are you aware of what's it called, the living water or easy water, or the different type of water that's in living beings in organic situation? Are you aware of that whole research at all? Well, let's see. Okay, so that is that's Gerald Pollack.
Yes, and that's part of the book too, with pictures.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, okay, if you have that in there, then that's something people ought to be exposed to, read about.
Missed you for a moment.
Yeah, so Gerald Pollack showed that.
Yes, it's the energy, the matter of energy and energy in water.
Yeah, well, water that's inside of us, or a plant or an animal or a single cell animal critter in the ocean, it's different than water that's outside of us. So there's H2O out there, then there's H3O plus / H2O2 minus, and there are two different molecules, like, working together, kind of because of this. It's like the elements slipped around a bit, the hydrogen and the oxygen, and they don't just stick by the H2O. And this is renewed by exposure to the sun, everybody. And you'd say, oh, well, how do we get it inside us? We don't get exposure to the sun. You stick your hand up to the light, in the dark in your bedroom or something when you're a kid, or still if you're an adult, you can do it. And there it is, the light's shining through your hand. Well, the sunlight is shining through into us like a ½ inch, an inch, and all the blood that's going by the peripheral capillary bed is getting recharged, changed from H2O to H3O.
I seem to be losing you a little bit sometimes, Matthew.
Okay. Are you losing? Yeah. I've been losing you quite a bit there. I hope that was Alberto. Did that make sense?
Have you?
Yeah, what's going on here?
You're still connected, Matthew, and you were sounding just fine. I think your signal's a little weak, Rixt, but you're coming in and out, so just
Rixt. Yeah.
I can hear you floating away.
Yeah, see, you come and go, and therefore I come and go to you. But I think that everything I'm saying, they're getting, the students are getting, and Alberto is getting. But at any rate, I just was going over the whole easy water, Gerald Pollack, and this water is transformed inside of us by exposure to sunlight.
Are we floating away, or?
Well, you are.
Rixt, why don't you try to turn off?
Yeah,
your
you were
camera?
talking about the sun going through your hand, didn't you?
Yeah. Okay. If you turn off your video, you probably will get better reception for the audio alone.
Yeah, Rixt, if you turn off your camera, at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little camera icon. You just click on it once, and your camera will turn off, but we'll still be able to hear you.
Hopefully we'll get.
Okay, let me see.
Stop cam. Oh yeah, it's the second icon in from the left. Oh. Well, at any rate, so this is so justifying to the Bach flower method of putting the flower in water and having the sun shine on it. My God, it's just like total verification. He couldn't have known anything about that. This is also the verification of the ancient alchemists who collected the dew, and particularly you get the dew off of the alchemilla. It's named for the alchemists, the lady's mantle. The dew gathers, or the water, it actually exudes out.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, but we want you to turn off. No, we want you to turn off the camera altogether. Can you do that? Let's see. I'll show you how. I mean, for me, there, I've done it. You just hit that button there at the bottom. See, you're gone again. You're frozen.
Yeah, Rixt, at the bottom of your Zoom,
she can't hear us.
Can you still hear me?
No, almost never. We can almost never hear you. You got to turn off your camera. Yeah, there. Okay.
That's
Rick,
perfect. Rick.
Yes, I did.
Yeah,
Can you hear me
okay.
now?
Yeah, now you're not getting interrupted because you're not taking this bandwidth. Okay.
It's just going.
Oops, there's a little glitch still. Yeah. Well, we may have to call it quits. It's gotten a little worse. Do we have some questions, Alberto? I would think there'd be a lot here.
We don't currently have any questions. People are commenting all sorts of things, and I posted those for people to see, but no questions other than the one about whether Bach flower remedies were still being made. And you and Rixt already answered that.
Yeah, by a number of different people, including the Bach Flower Center, quote unquote. Yeah, or Bach. I mean, I think Rixt is giving the correct pronunciation. Bach, I don't know. It's on English. I don't know. Maybe he was Flemish or something.
Dutch. Yeah.
Dutch, he was Dutch?
No, he was Welsh.
Oh.
Welsh.
Oh.
Welsh. Did you hear me? Yeah, he was Welsh.
Okay. Well, no wonder he was so psychic. So,
Could you hear?
Yeah, now we can hear you. Does his
Yes.
name mean tree, like in German or Dutch, or very ancient in English? Do you know what the name means? It's a Welsh name. Bach. Huh.
I think it might be beech tree, right? I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, that's all the same root. But then you would think, I mean, we mostly say Bach for Johann Sebastian Bach for English
Yeah, but
pronunciation.
that's German. He used to call himself Bach.
Bach. Okay.
And his friends used to nickname him Betchy. Or Betchy. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, Julian Barnard has some crazy accounts. There's some interesting things in there, like Dr. Bach before he became the flower essence thing, this is also verified today. He'd make potentized homeopathic, or no, even just he purified and denatured bacteria from the bowels, from the poop, and then made remedies out of this. It's like no wonder he rebelled and went to flower.
Yes, he did.
It's almost like it makes sense.
No, it actually was very effective.
Yeah, no, I'm not criticizing him. No, I'm just giving the account. So he became world famous. He did allopathic and homeopathic. It's a whole school. It still barely exists within homeopathy. But wouldn't you know it, within the last 15, 20 years, it's been verified. Now they're doing feces and fecal implants. It's like, holy cow, like his idea back then was phenomenal. But one thing I liked, this is just so mad scientist crazy, like Julian Bernard says how they would have social things that him and the homeopaths, and they'd all be talking, and he could point out the constitutions of the bowel nosode, the bowel germ constitution of the different people in the room. So can you imagine being in a room with a bunch of crazy homeopaths, like I don't know if Dr. Cooper would have been dead, but LeConte Cooper would have been there with a bunch of crazy homeopaths giving their bowel nosode, their bowel germ constitution. It's like, I just thought, like, holy cow, these people were as nuts as anybody I've ever met, or myself. So, did you catch any of that?
Well,
but yeah. Oops. We're just about losing you all together all the time.
Of course, studied as a homeopath.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay, well, we're kind of coming down. Generally, did you find there were any small doses amongst the Chinese? Yeah, thanks, Mel.
We might be able to hear you now, Briggs.
Oh, she's typing in. Yeah, okay.
Pardon?
Yeah, we
I
can't
just said
hear you, but we do off and on. But
I can hear now.
Okay, all right. So, well, we're kind of summing up here. I was interested. In China, do they have small doses that you're aware of at all? Yeah. Of course, what we call traditional medicine is standardized by the government.
Yeah, well, so again, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So it's interesting. The original, complexes or joint herbal remedies they made, they of course would have different parts in it and different roles for each herb, like the chief and the assistant and all that sort of stuff. And when you actually look at, and sometimes it might even have 20 or 30 herbs in there. So when you would actually look at the dosages then some of those dosages were extremely low. So it's quite variant. I was talking to a Chinese herbalist, and he said the dosages had increased over time. And originally, of course, they didn't use that much of the tinctures like they do now. You know, it was more decoctions. So it varies, and again it varies in he said it depends what herb you use and what you're treating the person for and who you're treating and what their constitution and everything else is. You know, it's again the same thing. It's more the Western world has increased it, and a lot of the combinations have changed because of the demand.
Yeah, well, I think, and then government standardization, they probably did towards the higher end. And but one doctor was very interested. I can include 50 Medicinals, the book by Huang, although sometimes it costs $1,000 because it's out of print. But he uses what he calls specific herbalism, herbs, and he bases it all going way back to Chang, who used very simple formulas, 2, 3, 4, 5 herbs, maybe not much more than that, and very specific symptomology, very specific. And plus, it doesn't use the whole Zhang Fu theory and stuff. It really, medicine was more primitive then. They didn't have even intuitive ideas about how the body works. 2008, 200 AD. So, and they are smaller doses. And that book is rather incredible for specificness in Chinese medicine. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's really, when you look at it all, it's in the 1990s or even some areas in the late 1900s that it all increased. But of course, dosages have also increased because the measurement of a minim came into effect. Because they found that the drop wasn't a precise measure, so they created the minim. But the minim was actually, they said the minim is equal to a drop, but it actually isn't. It's equal to 1.5 drops. So all the materia medicus and were changed to this higher dosage without realizing that they had increased the dosages altogether.
Wow. Yeah, there's more of those things than you'd think of out there. Yeah. You still there? Hello? Oops. Yeah.
It's very interesting. It's a fascinating subject. And the important thing, as you said and I've said, and so many of us say, it's not the dose that matters. It's the herb and the person. It needs to be person specific for that person at that moment in time. And Matthew, even milliliter dosage or ounce dosages, fluid ounce dosages aren't a precise measure either, because you are dealing with a living entity. A herb changes all the time, so it depends on the environment where it's grown. But also, what really is of importance is that if you are measuring a mill, say in Antarctica or a mill in a tropical country, then if you know your molecules in science, you know that mill is not a mill anymore once you bring it down to the other country. See, so that's why your bottles will last longer in one country than others. So even the mill in that sense doesn't seem to be that precise.
Well, yeah, and then, I mean, even the drugs, as I was saying, themselves are not that precise, even though the doctors pretend they are.
No.
So actually, yes, I would add one thing more. It's the the herb in its how you prepare it, and the person and the practitioner. So it's 4 different major things, at least, and maybe God as well, and Mother Nature smiling upon us. So, yeah, 6 things. Well, let's see. We've kind of reached the end of the class here. Are there any questions, you guys? Anybody? Even Alberto, do you got any questions? Yeah. No problem. Yeah. Okay.
I'm just fascinated by everything you're talking about. It's
I know.
phenomenal. And as soon as I thought I saw you were going to be doing this interview with Rixt, I thought to myself, how wonderful, right? Because lots of people talk about low dose herbs, but I feel like both of you are experts on the subject, and that's all the history that you've given is a testament to that. And so it's been very enriching to listen to all the history and also the commonalities across different countries. It's fascinating, and yeah, lots of food for thought for me. People were saying lots of great comments in the chat and in the comments, giving ode to Rixt, great herbalist, and she's helped many people. So that's phenomenal to hear from people that know Rixt. And by the way, I forgot to mention that there is a coupon code for Rixt's book, The Low Dosage Methodology. I've posted it a few times now, but you can save 40 New Zealand dollars with the coupon code. You'll find it in the comments, both in YouTube and in Facebook, as well as on if you're catching us on Instagram. So make sure you go find the book. I know I'll definitely be purchasing that book myself because it seems phenomenal, and I love the cover.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're interested in the history, there just is nothing else that compares. My little book, Vitalism, I would say that's important too. You'd want to get that one because that actually gives the guy's personalities a Paracelsus. And there are no women in the list.
Vitalist, yeah.
I was corrected. I did put in Thompson's mentor.
It's an amazing book, your Vitalism book.
Yeah, and we do know Thompson's mentor was Mrs. Benton, and someone did send me who she was, her actual maiden name and first name, but there's some Benton genealogy.
And Matthew.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, hello.
And Matthew, I would like to say very clearly that you've been amazing. I've been in touch with you for over maybe 20 years now, nearly close to it. The first time when I got in touch with you, and you are sharing of knowledge, and you're welcoming and inviting, and always being wanting to be there and share your knowledge is phenomenal. And I really, really, really appreciate you, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart, because you're a phenomenal herbalist and a phenomenal human being. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. No, I just remembered. Yeah, that was somebody else. Somebody else in New Zealand, I believe. Barry, someone is collecting all the Cooperiana that could possibly exist. I should put you and him in contact, even if he's not in New Zealand. But I thought he was actually in New Zealand, of all things. No wonder I got you guys a little bit mixed up. But he's trying to get a book published that's the collected works of Dr. Cooper.
Yes,
slowly
please.
Along.
If you can get
I'll work.
If you can get him in touch with me, that'll be great, and I might be able to. Yeah, that'll be wonderful.
Yeah.
I'll just see if I can still get my picture there.
Oh, we must say goodbye, and including having you present and waving.
Just wanted to make sure I could say goodbye in face.
In
waving,
person.
Yes. And thank you, Alberto, and Matthew. Thank you very much.
We'll see you. Thank you.
And Yeah, and thank you for inviting me. I've a great privilege. And I'm coming to the US next year, and I'm sure I'll make sure we meet up in person.
Yeah, right well in advance,
Going to
because I
visit the
might be able to get you into some sort of conference somewhere. So you'll be in the Southwest, like you were.
I'll be there in March.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be in Texas with the family. My husband's native to America, so I'll be in Texas in March, and we'll be there for a few months actually.
Okie doke.
Okay.
We'll see ya.
Thank you both so much. What a wonderful.
Okay, thank you. Take care. See you later.
The Minnesota salute
Thank you.
Because we have so many mosquitoes. All right, we'll see ya. Bye.
Have a good one.
Okay. See you
Have
later.
a great
Bye-bye.
rest of your day, Rixt. Thank you so much.
Bye, Alberto.
See ya. And for all of those who are still here with me, I'll bring you to the
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Well.
That was phenomenal. Thank you. I'll bring you to the Matthew Wood Institute for Herbalism. And lots of people are chiming in the chat here. Excellent conversation. Hi from Australia. Hello, Rebecca. Yes, watch the replay for sure. And Sachit Ananda saying, thank you so much for this chat. I look forward to seeing the replay and listening to it all again. Absolutely. Thank you all. And I'll bring you briefly to the Institute homepage and point out that if you are in the US, or even if you're not and you want to travel for an event with Matthew Wood, this might be right up your alley. If you scroll down on the homepage to the purple banner, you'll see Shamanism and Herbalism. It's a 3-day retreat in the rolling green hills of Boone, North Carolina. And it's all based on Matthew's latest book, A Shamanic Herbal, which you can find here. It's going to be phenomenal. If you click on this link here, it'll open up the Art of Living Retreat Center event page, who is hosting the retreat. But there'll be plant walks, plant journeying, meditation in nature, of course, lots of talk about shamanism and animal medicines. And if animal medicines are new to you, then I encourage you to click on the banner at the top of the homepage, and you can find a shamanic herbal there, as well as a free intro class for the animal medicines course. So you can find out all about it there. Of course, if you want personalized updates, then enter your email and name, and you'll get updates in your inbox. And of course, go to rixherbals.co.nz to find all of Rick's books and learn all about her. And then if you click on the banner here, Low Dosage Methodology and Herbal Medicine, you'll arrive and find all of Rick's books. And you can find the Low Dosage Methodology here. And the coupon code to save 40 New Zealand dollars is available in the comments. I'll make sure it's posted once again, but make sure you copy that code down so that you can save some money there. And lastly, I'll bring you back to the homepage. If you scroll down and go to free herbalism classes, you click on explore, you'll find lots of great free resources. All of these are full-length free classes, and you get 4 full-length free classes in the Craft Keeper Year 1 sampler, so you get a real good sense of what the Year 1 program holds in store. And as mentioned, the Animal Medicines free intro class is here as well. And you can also download your free set of late spring and early summer seasonal herbalist cards here. And I encourage you to join us on the Learn Herbal Wisdom Facebook group. And if you are not on social media, for example, if you're catching this through YouTube and you want to avoid social media, then come to the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism and join the community. All you need is a free account, and you'll be able to join a community that has all the benefits of social media with posts, tagging, videos, and pictures, and all of the benefits without any of the drawbacks. It's all herbal related, all students from the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, no advertising of any kind. And so it's a great place to hang out. And if you have any questions, you can let us know at hello@woodherbs.com. But thank you all for tuning in to this free offering with Matthew and Rixt Botello. I hope you have a fantastic day, morning, evening, wherever you're joining us from, and we will see you again soon. Take care.